What is going on, guys? We are back doing the final preview video for the weekend going on for the Autumn Nations. I know there's a few other games going on, but in terms of being able to watch them all live, I'm only sort of doing the coverage of the games I'm going to be able to watch. So there might be a couple missed off, but this will be the last one for the weekend. There's already a bunch of preview videos for the weekend up on the channel. Feel free to go check out those ones after this one to keep up to date with some of the rugby news. And if you're new to the channel, why not subscribe? It's free. And if you enjoy discussions about rugby, then hey, this is the place to be. So this one, Scotland versus New Zealand, a game I feel like we don't see a lot. Actually, I watched a little bit of a video with Gregor Townsend talking about it, and apparently this game hasn't been played for a good while going on at Murrayfield. So I'm really looking forward to see how this one gets on. Let's start off by talking about Scotland. So Scotland last week played Fiji. It was quite a tight game for that first half. It was the second half they really began to pull away. It ended up being a bit of a comfortable win for Scotland by the end, but there are still a couple of things they're wanting to work on. Some of the players coming back into the side were performing well. People like Richie Gray coming in had a good performance. They did sustain a couple of injuries. I believe Adam Hastings has picked up a bit of a knock along with a couple of other players. So Scotland this week, going up against a big team. We saw what New Zealand did in Wales, so Scotland obviously have to perform very well. So taking a look at the team that's been announced, starting off in this front row. Pierre Schoeman alongside Fraser Brown back in the team alongside with Xander Fagerson there. They'll want to have a big performance here. I think New Zealand's scrimmaging has been okay, but as we saw in the Rugby Championship, there are times where you can actually gain the advantage. So these boys, if you can put the shot on, why not go for it? Just keeping penalty counts down. We know how many different kicking threats that New Zealand do possess in their team now, so you can't really afford to give penalties away. If you give them those penalties at scrum time, it's going to be a long old day for you. In the lock department, Richie Gray and Grant Gilchrist. We don't get to see the two Gray brothers starting, which is something that I know a lot of people are really looking forward to, but Grant Gilchrist is in the side and he's a very good player. In the back row, no changes here. Jamie Ritchie along with Hamish Watson and Matt Fagerson. Three players which are still remaining a bit quiet. I'm waiting for them. I'm waiting for them to get started, waiting for them to get a big impact in the game. Jackal penalty is going to be a big one. The breakdown situation for New Zealand is looking pretty good, but there are chances to get involved. There are chances to get in the jackal, but it's the speed of the recycling of the ball for New Zealand is one of their key attributes. It's something they played really well against Wales with. Aaron Smith getting that ball out immensely quickly. Having people like Ritchie, Watson, Fagerson, these are the boys you want to get in and slow that ball down. Let your defensive line build, because New Zealand are going to come for the full 80 minutes of the game. You can't afford to let them get that pressure on you to begin with. In the halfback partnership, Ali Price retains that scrum half position, and Finn Russell comes back in the fly half. Gregor Townsend just can't get rid of this boy, can he? He's trying so hard, but at the end of the day, you have to bring Russell back in. Yeah, like I said, I think there was an injury to Adam Hastings, unfortunately. Blair Kinghorn, still a lot of people not quite sure about his performance at 10. Bring in Finn Russell, bit of excitement, bit of an attacking player, nice to see. I'm looking forward to see what he does. In the centre partnership, Sione Tuipulotu comes in alongside Chris Harris. They're going, trying to be more defensive, I imagine. I think Tuipulotu's defence has been relatively sound. Chris Harris's defence has just gone on so far since the days when we were talking about him a couple of years back. So I think this is probably a better setup to go for. They saw how attacking New Zealand were, especially when they were chucking like Geordie Barrett at 12. You know, that's an aggressive player to get in there. So defensively, got to be more sound, got to organise that line. Don't let the gaps open up, because New Zealand will just take advantage. And then in the back three, Duhan van der Merwe on the left wing, Darcy Graham and Stuart Hogg in that full-back position. Again, I feel like we haven't got to see the best from this Scotland team yet. Fiji really kept them just sort of in place. They really struggled to get going. Duhan van der Merwe, when he gets his hands on the ball, he wanted to run him, but we did see some crunching tackles against him in Fiji last week. Darcy Graham as well trying to get in. It's just a game of muscle. He's such a good stepper, but if those Fijians catch you, they'll just chuck you into touch. So I'm hoping this week a bit more room opens up for some of these wingers to get involved. But overall, it's an experienced Scotland team. A lot of players here over the 50 cap marker. It's the way to go. Have a big team on. It's going to be a big New Zealand team. Try and make the most of it. In the replacements then, we have Ewan Ashman in the hooker position, Rory Sutherland and WP Nell. I believe there's been a couple of issues for Scotland hookers at the minute. I believe Dave Cherry's picked up a knock. George Turner also picking up a bit of a knock. So a couple of people trying to find replacements now, but Ewan Ashman's still a good player. Rest of the replacement forwards, Johnny Gray and Jack Dempsey going for the 5-3 split. Always a big call against New Zealand, but they've probably seen against Wales last week, it was just relentless pressure. They were spreading it wide. They were kicking the ball long. So maybe having extra back coverage is a good way to go, especially if you pick up injuries and so on. Blair Kinghorn filling out the backs alongside Ben White and Mark Bennett. So good coverage. Ben White, I'm still looking forward to see have an actual amount of game time, 30, 40, 50 minutes of a game. I'm not sure this will be the one for. I think Ali Price will probably be staying on for a good chunk of this game. It'd be nice to see Ben White come on. Blair Kinghorn, of course, the super sub in terms of positions where he can go. And Mark Bennett. A lot of people wanted to see Mark Bennett start ahead of Chris Harris. I feel like I would probably be choosing Chris Harris for this game. I'm not really sure what the Scottish plan is going to be. If they're going to go for a lot of kicking, if they're going to keep ball in hand, if they want to go on the attack. This team, to me, looks like they may be going for a slightly more defensive angle, try and maybe reduce the amount of points conceded. I think I would pick Chris Harris over Mark Bennett for that option. So I think that's a good situation, but I've seen a couple of responses on Twitter, people disagreeing with that one. But a tough game for Scotland coming up. So let's talk about their opponents, New Zealand, who had a good game last week against New Zealand as a Wales supporter. Tough to watch as a rugby lover and someone who does rugby videos on YouTube. A great game to watch. Just so many players shining out. Aaron Smith, Ardie Savea, Geordie Barrett. What was the final score on the end? Like a 35-point difference. And just looked good doing it. Just relentless, unstoppable attack over and over and over again. They did have times where they were struggling a little bit just to hold on to Wales. Of course, we saw Rio Dyer getting a try. There are gaps that can open up in that New Zealand defence. I still maintain this is not the New Zealand team we saw a couple years ago that were just undefeatable. There is the opportunity to beat New Zealand here. There are mistakes happening. We are seeing dropped balls and handling mistakes and penalties coming in that aren't necessary. A couple of kicking choices that are potentially wrong. There's still the option to be able to get in there, but that game last week certainly cemented a few different views for the New Zealand team. So, having a look at the team this week, quite a few shifts up going in, which quite surprised me. I thought they might pick basically an identical team and just try and get some momentum, some consistent wins going on. Some interesting switches though. So in this front row, Ethan de Groot, Taukeaho and Lau Lala. Now, of course, they're trying out some different hookers here. They have been doing it through the Rugby Championship. Taukeaho is still a very good player. We've seen him go for those tries. But when he is on, you do tend to see that New Zealand back that rolling maul more often than not. I feel like Cody Taylor has the ability to run, but Taukeaho, they love chucking him in the back of a maul and seeing if they get a drive over try. So again, penalties consisted for Scotland. Their discipline hasn't been the best in quite a few games now. So giving those penalties away in your own half, maybe towards that 22, we could be seeing kicks going to corner there. In the lock department, Sam Whitelock and Scott Barrett, both of which getting involved in some good lineouts. This is going to be a good lineout competition. I'm looking forward to see Scotland versus New Zealand lineout actually. See how they're going to play it, see if they both go safe, see if they go a bit more wild, a bit more experimental. Maybe some of those long over-the-top ones. In the back row, Akira Ioane comes in alongside Dalton Papali'i and Ardie Savea, of course, just being unbelievable last week. A lot of people wanted him for a player of the round last week. I think it went to Boffelli in terms of the Autumn Nations, but I think Ardie Savea played awesome. To be fair, he's on real top form at the minute, an absolute threat. I think he's trying to get that sort of World Player of the Year status, and he's going the right way about it. In the halfback partnership, mixing it up this week, Finlay Christie comes in alongside Beauden Barrett. So I don't know about this, in all honesty. I quite like the Beauden Barrett at fullback, Geordie Barrett at 12, and Mo Unger at 10. I quite like the threat that offers. It's three really dangerous players, all in the correct positions to be really dangerous. Finlay Christie, I didn't get to see the game between New Zealand and Japan, but I have checked out the highlights, and it seemed like more often than not, when it was involved in Japan scoring something, it was Finlay Christie making a little bit of a mistake, either missing a tackle or getting a box kick charge down or not doing the right thing, so I felt a bit bad for him. But Aaron Smith last week was absolutely unbelievable. So I probably wouldn't have dropped in there, but he's also not named in the side. Not sure if maybe there was a twinge picked up. I knew there was a whole New Zealand A or New Zealand 15 team going on as well, which I think they did pretty well at as well. So, I might have changed that one back, but we'll see how they get on. In the centre partnerships then, David Havili comes in alongside of Anton Linnett-Brown. And again, I feel like I prefer personally the Rieko Ioane Geordie Barrett mix-up. I think I would go, I know I've only seen Geordie Barrett play 12 like 2 times now. I think he's phenomenal at 12. He's doing really well. Rieko Ioane offers like a different style of play as well. I quite like it. I think that Geordie Barrett's so sort of well-rounded as a player. Having him at 12 allows him to do so many different things. And then you just hand it off to Rieko Ioane and he just runs down the field. We've seen as well in the Rugby Championship some of the try-saving tackles that come from Rieko Ioane. Personally, for me, I would prefer to see Rieko and Geordie in at 12 and 13. David Havili and Anton Linnett-Brown is like an older style setup that they used to go for. I probably would have made a change there. But let me know what you think down in the comments. And then in that back three, Caleb Clark, Mark Talia coming in. Nice to see his name there. And then Geordie Barrett in that fullback position where most people are probably used to seeing him. Now, Mark Talia, I used to see when I was watching the Super Rugby Aotearoa. He was playing for the Blues. I'm not sure if he still plays for the Blues. But he's a good player on the wing. I think Caleb Clark and Talia both played for the Blues when I was watching the Super Rugby. It might be different now. Don't quote me on that. But they were both extremely good. Two very different styles. Mark Talia is very much a hard running, but you know, the weaving in and out sort of wing. If you give him the room, he's got the pace. Caleb Clark's more, yeah, I'm going to go through you sort of player. So, so two different threats on either wing. So nice to see there. Overall, a good 1 to 15 from New Zealand. In terms of the replacement bench, then Cody Taylor, George Bauer, and Fletcher Newell. Tupou Vaa'i and Shannon Frizzell. So also going for the 5-3 splits. We might be seeing a very exciting game in Murrayfield. We might be able to see some teams really open up. Looking forward to it. Replacement scrum half TJ Piranara. Of course, didn't get in the team last week. He was off with that New Zealand 15s team. Stephen Perofita, who I still am waiting to see in a bit of time from to actually know what I think about this lad. And then finally, Rieko Ioane, of course, covers your centre and winger position. So the malleability is still there in New Zealand. You know, you've got centres that can play wing, you've got fullbacks that go into centre, you've got people who can just move between fly half and fullback. Overall, this is a good New Zealand team. I think we're going to have a really fun game in Murrayfield. So what do we think in terms of a score prediction? Now, for me, I'm going to be backing New Zealand for this one. The scoreline they put on Wales was just quite dominant by the end of that game, and I can see it maybe going the same way. Scotland's discipline hasn't been the best. We saw the games from the summer against Argentina, even the game against Fiji last week. A couple of silly penalties coming in. You do that against some teams that could result in a 3. You do it against New Zealand that could result in a 7. So I'm going to say New Zealand to win. I'm going to say 12. I'm going to say New Zealand to win by 12, but then again, I think I said about New Zealand to win by about 10 or 12 against Wales, and that ended up being like 35. So what do I know about rugby, guys? Make sure you do drop down in the comments your thoughts on the game, your score predictions, and make sure you're getting them all on Super Brew before the weekend. I hope you've all enjoyed this one today, guys. If you have, remember to leave it a like. And I'll be seeing you guys over the weekend for some match reports from some of these games. Really looking forward to it. Going to be a good weekend of rugby, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.